Welcome into the studio. Very different this video for you. It's more of a Q&A, and then at the end I'm demonstrating a few of the pitfalls I see people make with PanPastels. So I've had lots of questions in. I'm just gonna go through those, give as complete an answer as possible, and I hope you find this video useful. Okay, so question I've got is what colours to start with if you can only afford a few. I've got my own wildlife set of PanPastels and I specifically picked them out. They're the colours that I would use most frequently, so it's got a lot of the browns in there. Also some colours for the background as well, like greens, the white and the black. Now I've done a video on this, saving money with PanPastels, so if that is what you're trying to do, if you look on the back of pans, it'll say something like this, burnt sienna shade. The other one would say something like burnt sienna tint. So that's burnt sienna shade. This is just burnt sienna. Okay, so the shade is this color with a small amount of black in there to make this color. So if you want to cut down on costs, you only need the major colors. So you don't want the shade, add in black, and if we went for a tint, that would have been adding white to it. Okay, so if you go for the main color and you've got a black and a white, you can make these other colors yourself. That's going to save substantial amount of money. As I said, I've already got a video on that explaining exactly what that means. Another question was, won't the PanPastels cover over your underdrawing? Well, yes it will, and no it won't at the same time. So it's possible two ways to look at this. So I'm using just a normal HB or 2B pencil here, and if I just take a small area, I then make a mark. Then if I now use one of the soft tools, and that's one that looks a bit dirty, okay, just clean it on a bit of microfiber cloth so people may not know what to do with that, and then most of the color will come off. Okay, so then that's ready to go. So a typical underlayer color for an animal in general could be this burnt sienna shade color. Okay, so I very rarely with the first coat of PanPastel do I go straight in. I usually mix the color on the printer paper, because that's what I normally do for beginners who don't know that that's how I mix colors. So say I wanted to go a bit darker, I can use a bit of a darker color, blend it in there. That kind of deposits some pastel on the paper surface, but it keeps a lot of pastel still on the soft tool tip, on these little spongy tips. This is called a soft tool. I think these are called knives. Okay, so you can rub on that, and because the printer paper is very smooth, it doesn't go wearing these things out. So then I would go to my pastel matte paper, okay, and go on there. Now the pastel matte takes the pastel off of the surface of this, so you can see it does cover the underdrawing underlayer. I can just see it. Okay, now that would be enough for me. I could just see it. But for instance, let's say that we've got dark area here on the animal, and then perhaps it's a bit lighter. Perhaps I should have picked a different color paper, but a bit lighter up here. So you see how you could still use your underdrawing to guide you, because that's all it's doing, is just guiding you as to where these areas are going to be. Don't forget the other thing that I do frequently with an underdrawing. So if I make a few more marks or areas on here, I would take a light coloured pencil and say this area, say these were stripes like on a zebra, that would be say white, that would be white, that would be white, and then Let's use this and say that would be dark. You know, that's why I do that initial little blocking in. You haven't got to do lines, you know, it could just be like that. Then I usually use my fingers to push it in the surface. When I come back with the pans now, you know, I can just easily see from my drawing where areas need to be light and areas need to be dark. So I'm not losing my drawing all the time. That's the reason I put the lights and the darks in as well. So yes, it can lose your underdrawing if you're applying quite thickly and if you're, you know, just randomly going over it. But the thing to remember with PanPastels, now this is one of their advantages and it's also one of their disadvantages, is that they're not completely opaque. So if we take that colour again, and I'll use a fair amount of it, okay, and that was just a Sharpie black marker just to prove the point. You see, even if I put quite a bit on, you can still see through a lot of it. Okay, so they're kind of a semi-opaque or semi-transparent, however you want to call it. Okay, let's go a bit darker just to prove a point again. Okay, so just zoomed in a bit more so you can see. That's where I'd normally rub into the surface, which takes a little bit of pastel off. You can see the black lines through it. If I take a similar colour as Jackson's stick, it's a typical stick, there's nothing special about it. I put a bit of pastel down instead and blend it. You can see that it's more opaque. So as I said, that can be an advantage because it allows some of the paper colour to show through. Also allows us to still see our underdrawing lines. But keep in mind then that if it's not going to be really opaque, then some colours suffer with this more than others. And what I find with my drawings, so let's look at the black. So it stays zoomed in, and I'll put some black down. Okay, so that's straight from the pan, it's as dark as it goes. Okay, so that's your black PanPastel. And then if I take a black stick instead, so this is just a cheap Faber-Castell, I think this is. I'll just go here. You can see how much darker that is, I hope, on the screen. This is a new pastel stick. So I'm not sure if that's showing up, hopefully it is, but you can see that the PanPastel looked black, but now it just looks grey, and that's because it's, as I said, it's not perfectly opaque. So that's why you see me using the sticks quite frequently at the end of a drawing. Let me put a pencil here. So this is one of the darker of the pencils. This is Caran d'Ache, and you can see that looks grey as well. It's darker than the PanPastel, but it's nowhere near as dark as the sticks. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. If you're just using PanPastels, you won't get the super dark darks. I think I've got some area by the side that I can do the same with white. So I've got a generous amount of PanPastel white on there. And I'll put a bit more. Let's make sure I've got lots on there. Okay, so that looks really nice and white. And if I use a stick instead, okay, once again you can see we've gone up another stage really in that tonal value or more, with us now much whiter. So that's why I love PanPastels for the underlayers, but as I'm doing more vibrant layers on top, whether they're punchy blacks or really punchy whites as well, that's when I'm using the sticks, because the sticks are punchier colours. So let's compare a few more while we're at it. Okay, so let's stay zoomed in. I've got some similar colours. So here's the PanPastel really vibrant blue, okay, on my grey paper. And here's a stick then. This is a Sennelier stick, so not same colour, but, and here's a Rembrandt. So you can see I've gone even more vibrant with those colours. Some colours then doesn't really seem to matter as much whether we use the PanPastel or not. As you can see, that's very, very similar. Let's take a look at a yellow. What have we got? We've got another. So this is the PanPastel brightest yellow. I'll put a couple of layers on there to really get into the tooth. I won't rub it in, so I'll give it its best shot. And then this is a Sennelier yellow. So not downplaying PanPastels, I use them a lot, but they've got their place in my opinion. And that's why I love using them on the underlayers. Can you use them for upper layers as well and create even more detail? Yeah, absolutely. I've got a cougar drawing that I've done where I detail it up quite a lot more. So you know, if this was the cougar colour, you know, the main colour, I could obviously go from there then and go lighter and start to make, you know, highlights and darker shadowy areas. And of course you can use these smaller tools as well to get even smaller marks on there. Okay, so you can go quite detailed with the pans if you want, but you need to really, for it to look detailed, you need to start drawing large to make these small details, you know, be in scale and in proportion. Now another question I had was, what are the best tools? So PanPastel has lots of different tools and covers that go on the tips of various ones. They wear out really quickly on pastel matte paper. Everybody says about it. I don't think there's a workaround with it, because I've tried and done another video showing little makeup sponges and things in comparison to this. Personally, I don't think they're anywhere near as good as the specific tools, but the ones I like to use are these more finger-shaped ones, and they last a lot longer than the smaller knife tools. So they're the ones that I really do the blocking in with, and you know, I haven't worn any of these out through all the drawings I've done, whereas you can expect to wear these out. You can see the top of that one is worn out, and you see little bits will come off on the paper. Those are not, that's actually the tool disintegrating, it's not the pastel falling down. So that one will last perhaps half of a big drawing before I've got to discard it and get a new one. But these, they last a lot longer, and you just rub them on microfiber. The foam doesn't seem to come off, and you can just swill them under water to get them clean again. So those are the best tools that I have found. So a question was asked, how do you get them even? So if you're doing, say, a blue even sky, how do you get the PanPastels even? The tip would be to not use little tiny tools like this if you're doing a large area, to actually use the largest sponges that you can for the area. So if it's really large, you can use something like that. If it's smaller, you can use something like this. And you need to get enough pastel down, because otherwise you will just get patches. Okay, so lots of people when they're doing backgrounds, they're struggling because all they're doing is getting a few patches down like that. You can still see the paper through it, and they're wondering, well, that doesn't look very good, now what am I going to do? Well, you need to keep adding more layers to get a nice even surface on there. You see, and use a gentle touch then as well. And keep blending with it. And that will get it more even. It's probably never going to be perfectly without a single mark on there. But don't forget, you could actually go over the top of that with pastel sticks if you wanted to. But you can see you need to get a fair amount of pastel down on there to get a nice even surface. You're not going to do it with just one layer. Okay, so build up your layers. If you're really struggling, then it's as the if I drag that down a bit, as these are a little bit more opaque, then you may find that the sticks, when you use those and build the layers up, so you put a layer on like that, try to get a clean finger, but I'll use what I've got at the moment, rub that in, come back, put a bit more on, rub it in again, see, blending it, pushing it into the tooth of the paper. And again, you may find that because these colours are more opaque, that you may find it easier to get an even layer with the sticks instead of the PanPastels. Okay, so I've also been asked about the colourless blender. So that's the colourless blender. So if you take a bit of colour off there. Okay, so it's not really colourless. So if I compare that then with white, so I'll take another clean part of the sponge. This is just your normal titanium white. As you can see, that's much whiter. So if we put some blue here, okay, if I then drag that down with the colourless blender, okay, so just a small amount, and I bring that down, okay, so what would the difference have been if I'd used titanium white instead? It's about the same, I assume. Okay, so I'll just put that in there. What you find is, see how much more power the white has got. So the colourless blender is a semi-transparent white, it appears to be, so it would allow you to not alter the colour as much, and you can manipulate the colour down a bit more and bring it down with that colourless blender. Because as I said, the white really does adjust the opacity and the colour a lot more. It's not something I've ever used myself, but that would be the use for it, I assume. But it is going to make a colour lighter to some degree. Let's try it with brown and see what happens. You know, it is going to lighten it, but certainly not to the degree you would have if you put white in there, a titanium white. See how much stronger that actually is. So that's the colourless blender. As I said, I haven't used it myself, but that would be the use to actually drag the colours or merge the colours together more. Okay, I've also had a question about mixing the colours. Now, what I don't do personally, although it can be done, is mix colors to make something completely different. Okay, so for instance, we could use blue, and the old classic then, add yellow to it. And what are we going to get? With paint we would get green. Okay, and with the pans we do get green. But you don't get the vibrancy that you would normally. There, see that's a fairly vibrant green. But I don't use colour mixing with pan pastels like that at all, really. What I would do, I'd be more inclined to do something like, if I had a kind of a sienna colour, or I'm not sure if they call that ochre colour, burnt sienna colour, and if that was too bright, I could just change it down a little bit by adding some of the brown in there, or I could do it even more by adding some of the black to it and mixing it in and getting my colours like that. So just really adjusting shades slightly. You see, or I could want to say I thought it needed a little bit more pink in there and to be a little bit more opaque. Okay, I could be doing that kind of a colour to it. I could say, oh, that's too much now, I need it to be a bit more browner, so I'd add a little bit more brown in. Or I could say it needs a bit more yellow to it to deaden the colour down, or add a little bit of a yellowy tinge to it. So I just barely, although the difference can be quite a lot, I don't really go trying to make, you know, different colour completely. I'm not going to really do the yellow and the blue to make a green. I don't use it like that at all. I don't find I can mix the colours anywhere near as accurately as I could with paints. So I've got a fairly, you know, get a fairly good selection of pan pastels, then you've got your colour quite close, so it is only generally a small adjustment to get the exact colour that you want. Okay, something else people may be asking is, how do you clean them? I don't never really clean mine at all. I find that if you wanted to clean them, you can just use a sponge, preferably a cleaner one than this, and actually just go along in there. So you've got a little bit of colour, you're not wasting much at all. Rub that on your microfiber cloth to get that clean. You can go back in again, and then that's, you know, generally clean enough, so they're that easy to actually clean. And some people think they're very expensive as well, but it's surprising how much you actually get in there. With all the colours that I use and all the drawings that I've done, I'm still using the same black, so that just goes to show that they do last a heck of a long time. You're not going to be, don't think that you're going to be doing just a couple of drawings and all of a sudden your colours are gone. They do really last a long time, so they are actually very cost effective, and as you've seen, they go a long way as well. Now another question is, do you need to have pan pastels? And the simple answer is no. I've got them myself specifically for the underlayers, because when I'm working quite large, as you will probably have seen on my videos, they cover an area very quickly, and that saves me a lot of time when compared to, say, a pencil. You know, I can really block in an underlayer very fast in comparison to a pencil, and faster than a stick really as well, to get a bit more control. And I only want light layers for underlayers, and I find the pans superb for that, because by the very nature of them going on with a sponge, and then I just generally do a slight rub like that, then I've still got virtually all of the tooth of the paper left, so that I can easily go over the top of it with my pencils and doing the refinement and detail. The only thing you want to be careful of is don't go really overloading areas, because if you just overload it like that, and then you're going to go in with especially harder pencils like pit pencils, then sometimes you find that the pencil will skip. Like, that's still okay-ish, but I wouldn't be putting layers down like that underneath. I'd be pushing them in much more first, and then you get an even cleaner line on there. But when you're using the soft pastels, obviously, as we saw earlier, they are much softer by their very nature, and they're more prone to clogging or blocking, filling the tooth of the paper in. So that's one of the reasons I really love PanPastels. But on my videos I do show doing underlays with pencils, with pans and with sticks, so don't feel that you've got to have them. I'm not pushing them in any way. I've done many drawings with just the pencils, and also many drawings using sticks as underlayers, and then also pans. So it's totally up to you. And I'd say if you do a lot of wildlife especially, you know, get something like these kind of colours, the browns, the burnt siennas. That's a burnt sienna extra dark, so you could get that then by adding more black to it. And try a couple out first and see what you think of them for an underlayer. Okay, so now I'm going to show you a couple of little demos, not full demos at all, with PanPastel, but this is subjects that people seem to have problems with, and I'm going to show you what I do and the reasons I do it as well. So I'm just going to do little sections on a couple of different animals. Okay, so white subjects, that's a particular one that people usually have issues with. So I've got this white wolf, two different colours really and tones on both sides. So I'm going to tell you why I do each one. Now if you hear him clicking noises and that, we're having a heavy storm outside, but I want to continue doing it to get these the information out to you rather than to wait, because when the rain starts in the UK and in Wales in particular, it could go on for a week non-stop, and I don't want to wait that long. So okay, I like to blur my reference photos when I'm blocking in, so I'm just concentrating on the major masses, and I'm going to do that on each of them. And I've selected the subjects, as I said, because each one poses a bit of a different difficulty. Okay, so you can blur them out. I show this on some of my other videos. If you go into an image editor and then you click blur or blur more or even Gaussian blur, then you can have a slider and take it to the level you want. And I just like to get rid of all the details, so it's just showing really the masses of colours and tones. And if you've got a particular image editor you use, if you just search on YouTube, somebody will have done a demonstration on it and shown how it can be done on there. So you're just looking for blur, and those people on YouTube do better videos like that than me. So all I've done, I've just really roughly sketched by there a minute, just put some pencil down on there, because what we're really concerned about is the pans. Okay, so a bit tricky to show how I do all this on screen all in one area, but let's see what I can do. So okay, let's stick it to the blurry one to start. Don't worry about those lines, I just use those to draw on with my pencil. So if I'm looking for this colour, okay, then I use some printer paper as my palette. Okay, so that's just darkish blue PanPastel, so I can put that on some scrap. You see it's way too dark. You also need a bit of purple in there, I can see as well, so I've got some purple here. So just take a little off there, put that on, a bit more. We can try it again. Miles too dark now, but if I add some white, don't want too much white, but probably more than that, and I think I've gone too purple, but we can see. So this is how I just try and match up the colours. So yeah, too purple, so I'll put a bit of blue in there. So you see, I'm just starting with a colour that I think is roughly rightish, and then adjusting it. It's all falling down because it's just printer paper and I'm at an angle as well, so way too blue now. So if that's too blue, I want to grey it, so I'm just adding a bit more of a grey kind of PanPastel. Is probably just out of shot. A little bit more white. And it's just playing back and forth till I get close-ish with it. Okay, that's not too far off. It's close enough for the demo anyway. So let's just move that a bit to the side. So that's the kind of colour now I will go in by here. Do my strokes in the direction of the fur growth, the way it's flowing, growing. Go slightly lighter down here. Spend as much time as you want when you're doing yours, and this is just the underlayer. So you see, I'm not even that bothered myself. It's not critical. The colours, they all change. You see how many layers that I usually put on. Okay, so then it's a little bit grayer, perhaps here. As I said, this is no accurate drawing at all, but I'm going to tell you why I'm doing certain things. I don't want to get carried away with it because I want to do a few different subjects. So in by here, then it's lighter. So I don't have to be any more accurate than this with the pans, because I'm not doing a finished drawing, I'm doing an underlayer with my pans. That's what I like to use them for, as you probably know. Okay, and I like to rub it in, but you can see it doesn't move around as such, just taking the excess off the surface. Now, let me swap that tool around. So I'm going to show what I would do on the other side. I should really have a clean one of the tools. But let's have a look, see what we can do with this anyway. So, on the other side, look how light that is. Okay, it's almost pure white. Now, where people make a mistake is they go too dark under pure white. So let's look at the in focus again. So we're even blown right out there. Okay, now whether you like that or not is up to you. I would probably bring some detail in, but let's just say whatever the subject is, you want it blown out pure white like that. Now if you put, what I'll do, I'll show you mistakes. Okay, so let's go to this detail side now. Let's check that's still on the shot. Yeah. So what people could do there is, I'll show you what I would do first. Okay, so I take some white, let's put it on there, and we need white here, so we would be see, I'm going right in. I've got a bit of pink on here, but forget about that, and I would go right in with the lightest colour straight off, because I don't want to contaminate underneath it, because it'll keep picking up other colours all the time and it'll never come back this white, or at least it'll be extremely difficult to get it back this white. Don't expect this to turn into a finished drawing. As I said, I'm going to be stopping soon. I'm just showing you reasons why. Okay, So let's say for instance now, instead, somebody thought they would put some grey under there. Okay, so here's a light grey. It's a bit of a bluey grey to it. Okay, so let's say that area there we wanted very white. Let's pretend that's up here, and the person put some of this bluey grey under there, because you need a dark underneath to make the light show up, yeah? So if I now go in, clean that little tool off, if I now go in with white, okay, it may be difficult to see, but it's not white like I would be able to get down here. And if I went in with a white pencil as well, it all goes a bit muddy and it's difficult to get back to a pure white again. Yeah, so what I'm saying is, if you want an area to be pure white, you need to really go in there with the white straight away. Now by here we want some detail in there as well. If I move that aside a bit so I've got some room, I could come on top of here now with these colours are not too far off. This may look a little bit light. Let's try this one. Maybe a little bit too blue, but just for demonstration purposes. Yeah, you can see how it's showing up. I can blend it in. See, this one's a bit lighter, but so we don't need to go substantially darker on the underlayers. Okay, so you can see there how I would start to lay that up. Okay, so what about there? Where it's a bit darker. Now I'd have to get a different blue pencil, but let's just pretend by here a bit. So what you want there, because you've got lights and darks here, you wouldn't want to go too dark. Yeah, you've got to go dark enough for our lights to show up. So when you came back with the pencil then, yeah, it would actually show up, and you leave the little areas in between. Soften it like that. Okay, so that's why I put the whites in light and quite vibrant early on. Just to keep that colour fairly clean. Okay, as I said, so you would just build up the layers, as you've seen in all the other videos where I really go into detail on things like that. Okay, so let's take a look at the other end of the scale then, something dark. And I've blurred it out again there. Okay, just to show you the main masses that I would concentrate on and not worry about the highlights so much. So when you blur your photo, you can, if you want, just go into the levels or the brightness, just take it down a tiny bit. Okay, if you want to work on this really accurately. So if I fold that again. Okay, so now I'm going to do the opposite to what I did with the white. Okay, so because these areas are really dark, see if I can hold this with one hand as well. I'm going to go in with my darks straight away because I don't want to really contaminate those with anything light underneath. Okay, so we've got, it's really dark here. And see how the pans, as I've shown before, are not black. So this is black, okay, but it's not really dark black. For the underlayer, I'm not bothered with that at all because you can see the paper through it still. Remember I said that the pans are not that opaque. So that's okay because I know I'm not filling up all of the tooth of the paper either. So I'm using this more as showing me where the darks need to go rather than these being my real darks. Okay. So up here then, it's a richer colour. So I don't want to go too dark black under there because that's like I say, a rich colour, even richer than what I've put on. I could have gone really, but I'm just using the supplies I've got around me. Because if I went really dark black under there, so say I went black over all of this, I'm going to struggle to get that richness back. So I don't have to be too critical. Okay, so if I put black there, say this was that section and I thought, oh, I'll just haphazardly stick a lot of black on here. You see, I'm going to muddy it and dirty it when I put the rich colour on top. I'm not going to get that richness that I've got there. Okay, so if this was my underlayer now, and let's put a couple of these lighter kind of bluer areas, bluey grey areas here. Just so you can kind of see the shape of the animal. Now I would go over that then with my lighter pastels and sticks or pencils. Okay, so let's say that's that bit there. And then here, because it's so black, this is where I would start to use my sticks. Remember I said they are much blacker than PanPastels. I'm just giving you the kind of idea. If you need a really opaque, rich colour, that's when you go to your sticks. Yeah, not even your pencils will probably be rich enough, and then start blending that in, so still like an underlayer. Probably picking up sounding really harsh and rough, but you know, the pastel mat is not that harsh and rough, obviously, as you know. And I can come in here now, you see, and start to kind of work negatively and put in these areas of dark that would be in there, and not to contaminate too much on the rich brown. And then this is the kind of colour that you struggle with if you don't use sticks, because you won't get this colour like this in the pencils either. That's this rich brown. And once again, this is not going to be anything detailed at all. I'm going to stop it soon, but I'm just showing you again why I'm leaving some areas, or why I'm going in with the darks straight off, or going in with the lights straight off. Why I'm not contaminating underlayers. And that's really important with the lights and the darks that are really at the, you know, end of that spectrum. It's not anywhere near as important when we're looking at mid-tone kind of colours, which is what I'll look at next. Okay, so this time, what happens when we've got light areas and dark areas over the top of each other, or the lights over the top of the dark? So do we go really dark and look at, for instance, if we look in here, do we go for that darkness there, or do we go light and then put the lines in after? What do we do there? Okay, so that's the problem. I blurred the photo again, blurred it quite heavily. As you can see, I went into my levels or brightness and I took that down slightly, only slightly. So these are now the colours that we're looking to create. Then we know that when we go in with the pencils, the lights will go on top. If we need to go even darker, for instance in here, you can see we've got some really dark areas around. We've also got some dark areas in there. We can put them in with the pencils before we put the lighter on top. So we're looking at kind of the middle tone, middle to darkish. Okay, so if we look at this blurry one again, we get a bit of paper, and this time I'll use one of these sponges, because the other ones wear out so fast, as everyone knows. They're really good, but they fall apart quite quickly. Okay, so let's make up some colours. So we've got a kind of a rich brown there. Once again, I'm not really going to be able to match. I'm not looking to match exactly, but roughly. I would spend a bit more time than this, obviously. And I can squeeze the sponge. If I want that a bit darker, I can add a bit of that bluey grey in there. That deadens it. See? Up in there it would be pinker, but I'm not going to be concerned about that. Over here we've got kind of that warmish sandy colour. Can I move that a little bit? I think that's close enough just to show for the demo, isn't it? So that'd be under there, and that kind of comes around. Bit darker under here. See, it's more of a bit of a bluey colour there. I'm just like looking at those colours. Up here we got a bit of a pink, but I haven't got a pink out. I don't think. I could try a bit of purple. It's a strong colour. Purple, white, grey it down, and a little bit of that brown. I know my white, that's not pure white, so I can go over there, because look, there's hardly any colour going down on the paper anyway. By there, could have gone a little bit lighter, couldn't I? But see how I'm not really going massively accurate with this. I would spend more time, as I mentioned, if I was doing it for a proper drawing rather than just a quick demo. And then under the eye, not that light, and not that punchy anyway, a colour. I could go around like that. So I'm not even concerned about sticking in between the lines. And blend them together a bit. I'm not going to do the eye. I've done loads of eye kind of demos in the past. Okay, so that's your basics on there. Just put a bit of black there so you can see easily that would be the eye. We can move from that one now. Let's have a look at the detail one instead. Okay, so that would be the eye. Move the pans out the way a bit, and that would actually come down like that, around and like that. Okay, so down by here now I could start coming in with some darker fur marks. Letting some of that PanPastel show through. And we need to go even darker. So I've got dark brown here, but that's barely any darker. That's the one thing you struggle with, is to get a dark, very dark brown. So once some darker areas in here, So see how I went in with kind of the mid-tone, yeah? And I've decided this needs to go darker. Once again, I'm rushing a little bit, or not rushing, I'm just not taking that much time, because this is just showing you why I'm doing the PanPastel thing, not the detail, because I've got loads of detailed videos, as you know. Then I can come on top of that with the other colours. See, I'm not going over all those darks then, I'm leaving some showing through. I could do the colour in between those really. Okay, so that's where I would do that dark section. And then up here we needed it to be browner, warmer, more like this colour, see there? So I can put that in now, refining what we've got down there. Need a little bit in there as well. That could be a darker grey. Not really that dark, but you see, that's deceiving. That's not even really showing up on there. So if you get something like that, it's worth a look. Fold your paper. Okay, so we're pretty much dark enough, we just need to go lighter. Could go slightly darker on there. Just in a few places. So you see how you can go, you don't have to go, oh it's got to be really dark there. You can be like I've just done, and then come in with your lighter strokes. Or put your dark in with your pencil, you know, and then come back in now with your lighter strokes. So I don't really want to be coming in this light yet, but it's going to show you, I think, the technique it would be anyway. So I would have put more layers on there rather than come in with that light just yet, this early. We've all seen this on my other videos anyway, where I'm doing it much more accurately. Okay, so by here we've got the dark in place already, so I can come in with the lighter ones. This is predominantly kind of mid-tone. See, then lighter on top again. This area I would have gone a bit more careful, kind of like I was doing now with the pans. I would have put that colour in. Okay, so that would have been a bit more vibrant in there. So you can see how I would build that up. And it would be the same around here. And then we got some darker marks in there, so it's predominantly that colour. So that's what I've done first. Then I can put these darker marks in. Okay, then I would actually want a lighter version of this to show up properly. Okay, so I would have picked that colour. So I haven't got one like that out, but you know, I'm just using what I've got there. So we have got lots of leeway with pastel matte paper for not having to be super accurate underneath. But you don't want to abuse that too much by going, as I've shown, really light under an area you need to be dark, and vice versa, because then you will struggle to get your tones right. All your drawings will turn out too dark. If you go too dark underneath, you won't be able to get it back. Okay, so there's no point me doing any more of this. I'm just showing, I think I've showed the idea of laying the PanPastel down, because that's what all this was about. An area like this, you see it needs to be darker in there. So what I would get is a dark grey that would have matched that a bit more. So this is a bit too dark. So I would have come in with a pencil that was a bit more blue, lighter blue in it. I'm going to use my bluey greys to have done that, and then gradually done my usual and gone lighter and lighter with it. So hopefully this video has answered some of your PanPastel questions. See you all again real soon.